Virginia is a news of the day hotspot because there's a big governor's race coming up in a little bit less than a month. You are supporting Democrat Abigail Spanberger in the race against the current lieutenant governor, Winsome Earl-Sears. Abigail has a pretty hefty lead at this point. The average is about 6 points, but some polls have her up 10. A recent poll had it much closer in a neck and neck, dead heat. Why are you supporting Abigail Spanberger for this, and what are your thoughts on the race?
Well, these elections are finite choices, and we have Winsome Earl-Sears on one side, and we have Abigail Spanberger on the other side. It's a real easy decision. Winsome Earl-Sears is a deranged candidate. She's unhinged. She said some crazy things over the last few weeks.
Hi, everyone. This video is just a preview of the full episode, which you can tell because it's only a few minutes long. And the full episode is available on our own YouTube channel, the Raging Moderates YouTube channel. That's where all of the rapid response content is going. We're doing a bunch of interviews. Scott and I just sometimes talking about something that we find interesting. We hope that you'll join us over there and subscribe. This is all in addition to the usual Wednesday and Friday podcasts. Click the pop-up link on your screen right now or head over to youtube.com/@RagingModerates to subscribe. Thank you.
But over her entire career, especially, but just recently, as we lead up here. And Abigail Spanberger is focused on the issues that Virginians care about. She's focused on affordability, making housing, energy, food, groceries. She's dealing with the everyday kitchen table issues. You know, the stuff that folks used to care about. You know, we're trying to make America boring again here in Virginia. We want to go back to just worrying about the everyday issues that folks care about, while Winsome Sears is still focused on, you know, where kids pee and poop. I call them the pee and poop caucus. That's all they focus on, which bathroom they go to or whatever else they're doing. I mean, and we're focused on what kids are learning in school. And I think that's what Abigail Spanberger is focused on, making sure how we improve teacher pay, how we improve our public education system. And I think voters will choose Abigail because she is the adult in the room, focused on the issues that most parents are focused on, most voters are focused on. You see the impact that the government shutdown is having on Virginia. I mean, it's devastating our workforce. And it's not just the government workers that are being impacted. It's all of the ancillary folks that support them. It's the restaurant owners. It's the daycare centers. It's the transportation services. It's the tourism. I mean, you have a million industries that are being impacted by this. And then Abigail is on the right side of fighting for health care right now. We have, you know, Winsome Sears is saying that she backs the president's plan to continue to kick people off of health care and kick people off of Medicaid. People who are working every day who need those stipends to make those ends meet. She supports that, and Abigail does not. So I think when you add up, go down the checklist of things that matter to voters, from energy to transportation to healthcare to education to public safety, Abigail's on the right side of the issues. The Police Benevolent Association here in Virginia, they hadn't endorsed a Democrat in probably the last 4 elections. They endorsed Abigail Spanberger because they know they can trust her to keep us all safe. And so that's why I'm supporting Abigail. It's real easy.
Yeah. I remember then Congresswoman Spanberger was one of the loudest and most prominent voices in the Democratic Party coming out against the whole idea of even talking about defunding the police during the 2020 summer after George Floyd was murdered. She and Whip Clyburn are the two voices that I certainly heard the loudest on that. And I'm sure that weighed heavily on the Benevolent Association when they were thinking about getting into this race and endorsing her. I had also never heard the Pee and Poop Caucus, which I will be using. I'll credit you for that one. I do want to ask you as well about the Attorney General's race in Virginia, which got a little bit more complicated in the last week or so. There were old text messages from the Democratic candidate, Jay Jones, who's a former colleague of yours, from 2022, which are very violent in nature, talking about putting 2 bullets in the head of the former speaker, a Republican, also speaking about, you know, being violent towards his children. You have condemned the text messages. Jay Jones has apologized. You've also said that there's a double standard at play here in requests for him to drop out. Can you talk about that further, especially in this moment when political violence is such an important topic in this country?
Well, political violence is an important topic, and just the racism and the hatred that you've heard just yesterday in a political article that came out around the young Republicans, and I hadn't heard anybody condemn that. I've known Jay Jones since he was in high school. His father, who was a judge in my community, was a mentor to me. His father sat one pew in front of me at my church. He and his grandmother and Jay's grandmother, and so I've known him for a long time. Those comments were deplorable. He knows it. They're reprehensible. He said it. He said they made him sick to his stomach when he reread those. He has apologized profusely. I know Todd Gilbert. Todd Gilbert is a friend of mine. We both end up being speakers of the House, and we both were born in Texas, so we both get along very, very well. I talked to Todd yesterday, in fact. We get along. Todd and his family, they said they have. He told me, he told Jay he has forgiven him for those comments from 3 years ago. And so when I talk about a double standard, we know that this was a cynical use of politics. I mean, imagine if your house was on fire and then you waited 3 years to call 911. That's what this is. Jay was so dangerous that in 3 years they waited to drop these texts the week before the election. It's the cynical use of politics. It's the politics that Obama called the politics of personal destruction. Jay has apologized. We've moved on, and I think we all have to move on and let him run his race. And I think the issues right now are so important. We know that Attorney General Jason Miyares, he will probably, if he were to win, he will probably be suing me, Abigail Spanberger, bringing criminal charge. These people who are following Donald Trump right now, they are literally doing exactly whatever he says in prosecuting Letitia James and James Comey. And Todd Gilbert, my friend who was the subject of those texts, he was fired in the Western District of Virginia for not prosecuting folks that the Trump, according to the New York Times story yesterday, for not prosecuting FBI agents. You know what I mean? Who were involved with the Russia investigation. So I think it's important that we move on and look at this in a more global perspective. I think it's a double standard, and I think right now we just have to move on and let both of those folks run on their own issues. The other thing I was going to say about the double standard, when Governor Youngkin asked John Reed, the lieutenant governor candidate for the Republicans, to step out because he had saw evidently some photos, some compromising pornography or something with John Reed, and they asked him to step down. Winsome Sears made a Facebook post when asked whether he should step down. She said, "I'm not going to get involved. That has nothing to do with me. I'm going to run my race. He has to run his race." Now, all of a sudden, when it's politically convenient, that's not the case anymore. She's trying to make sure that, asking, Abigail to take ownership over Jay's stuff. And I don't think that's fair.
Yeah, that was definitely the moment that Winsome Sears was looking for in the debate last week, asking her about it. I happen to think the moment where she said that getting rid of gay marriage wasn't discrimination was the more salient moment. But, I'm glad to hear your take on this, and that Todd Gilbert has forgiven Jay Jones for those texts, because obviously they, were worthy of that level of condemnation. And the text that you're referencing from the Politico story yesterday, are young Republicans from all across the country talking about how much they love Hitler, how racist they are, terms that I certainly am not going to be using on this podcast. And J.D. Vance basically said, "I'm not interested in condemning that." He said, "I refuse to join the pearl clutching when powerful people call for political violence," which doesn't really seem like it's helping out the tenor of the conversation at this particular moment in our history.
Yeah, I just think, everybody needs to tone it down. That kind of stuff shouldn't be accepted. And on either side. I remember when there was an assassination attempt on Donald Trump. Immediately, Todd Gilbert and I, we did a joint statement condemning any political violence. That is the type of leadership that folks want to see from our political leaders. And it would be nice. All of the reprehensible things Donald Trump has said, shooting Liz Cheney in the face, beating his enemies, shooting folks if they're in a store, extrajudicial punishment. It would be nice if he would apologize one time. Jay Jones and everybody else have apologized. He's never apologized, and nobody's asked him to apologize. So I think this double standard is that whole thing where they can say whatever they want to, do whatever they want to, and there's nobody asked them to apologize, and nobody's apologizing today for the comments that they just found out about yesterday. And I talked to a gentleman yesterday who's a Republican, a black Republican, who happens to also be gay, and he was the chairman of the Young Republicans here in Virginia. And I called him yesterday just to say, hey, I'm sorry. He and I have a good relationship. I say, hey, I'm sorry you had to go through that, because he was the subject of those texts,
Oh,
calling him the derogatory gay slurs, the derogatory racial slurs. And I spoke to him yesterday, and he was really hurt. He'd done a Facebook post about it, and I thanked him for his bravery and calling for these type of people just to leave the Republican Party. There's no space for that, and that is it's a lot of harm being caused, and it's really time for us to try to move forward. But we need leadership to do that. And it has to start at the top. And so far, we've seen nobody at the top move in a different direction. In fact, they continue to embrace this type of rhetoric.
yeah. And we have 3+ more years of it.